Hello wonderful people, today we're diving into operators. You probably are already familiar with operators like plus minus equals from math, but as we'll discover in a minute, in programming they go way beyond just simple arithmetic. But let's start with these ones. So we have the most important thing to watch out is the kind of result you are expecting. So for instance, if you are using two integers to perform a division, do not expect to get a real number. Do not expect any rounding, fractional part, anything like that. So for example, the result is 3, not 4, not 3.5, not anything like that. And again, that's because an int can only store integer numbers, so no fractional part. Next point, whenever you want to get the remainder of a division between two integers, use the percent operator. In math, 9 divided by 4 equals 2, remainder 1. In C#, we get the same result like this. When dealing with the division between two numbers of which at least one is a real number, the result will be a real number. So for instance, as you can see, we get an error about not being able to assign a double to an int, and that's because the result of an operation involving a double will be a double, and the double cannot be assigned to an int because the int can store the fractional part. So remember that. If you remember from math, you are not allowed to divide by 0, and if you try to do that, you will get an error or a special kind of error, an exception of divide by 0 exception. But if you try to do the same thing with real numbers, it will work, and the result will be positive infinity, negative infinity, or a special kind of a value called nan, which is an acronym for not a number, which is an invalid value. Another kind of operators are the comparison operators, which, as their name suggests, are used to compare operands. There are 6 kinds of them. So greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equality check, and difference. And all of them return a Boolean result, either true or false. Notice the difference between the assignment operator, a single equal sign, where we give a value, and the comparison operator, two equal signs, where we compare a value, because this is a very common mistake among beginners, so pay special attention to that. Speaking of assignment, there are a ton of operators in this category, so I won't even try to list them all because frankly some of them I used 10 times in my entire career, some of them never, and you as a beginner definitely don't need to trouble yourself with. So aside of the assignment operator, we also have incrementing and decrementing assignment, but because incrementation and decrementation is such an important topic, even though they are also arithmetic operators, we'll talk about them at the end of this video. Was not that important, at least with beginners, are Boolean operators. They were used a ton back in the day when computer memory was really small, but that's rarely the case nowadays. So unless you have a specialized situation, you won't need them. Next we have logical operators, not and, or, and exclusive or. And I'll show you what's called a table of truth and we'll discuss it. Now, I know this looks intimidating, but hear me out. This is really simple. So let's see. We have two Boolean operands, x and y, and they can have values like true and false. And then we have the 4 logical operators, not, and, or, and exclusive or. Now let's see what not does. First of all, notice it involves a single operand, x. And when x is true, it returns false. When x is false, it returns true. So in other words, there's just inversion. Whatever value you had initially, you flip it, done. Next, the AND operator. First of all, it involves both x and y operands, and it returns true when x and y are true, and false for all the other cases. But take a minute to reflect on what AND actually means. X and y. So in order to return true, both x and y must be true. So forget about learning tables and all that. It's right there in the name of the operator. both x and y must be true, so I can return true, and false in all the other cases. And it's the same for the OR operator. As you can see, it returns true when either x or y is true. It doesn't matter which. If one of them is true, it will return true. It only returns false when both are false. The only one that is a bit more complicated is the XOR operator, or the exclusive OR, which returns true when the values, the operands, are different. But I've used it about twice in my career, so if you know about it, you're fine. I won't show you examples of how to use these operators. There are specialized lessons coming up about dealing with them, so stay tuned. Finally, we have type converter operators, but those are important enough to warrant a separate video, which will be the next one. For now, I'll just list them: as is, cast, type of, and size of. There are other operators like the dot operator, because yes, in C# even dot is an operator, new, index, ternary, and so on, but we'll use those as we'll encounter them. For now, just know that some operators are more important than others, or more accurately, they have a higher precedence, meaning if you are using two of them in the same expression, the one with a higher precedence will be executed before the one with a lower precedence, like so. So we are trying to calculate the mean value, the average. 5 plus 10 plus 15, 30 divided by 3, 10. But actually, it's 20. And that's because division has a higher precedence than addition, and it will be executed first. So whenever you want to force an order of operation, just use parentheses like so. And now the result should be good. And that's because parentheses have the higher precedence of any operator in C#, so there is nothing that can be executed before them. So whenever you are in doubt, don't try to learn which one is more important than others, just use parentheses and be done with it. You should also know that operators applied on different data types produce different results. So for instance, the addition, the plus sign, applied on numbers performs addition, but applied on strings performs something else called concatenation, when it just joins the two strings into a new string. But we'll learn about that in the future. At the end, I said we'll discuss the incrementing and decrementing operators, and these are really simple, but they are also a very frequent operation. So let's say you have something like this. We are assigning to a variable the result of adding 1 to its own value. Process called incrementing by 1. And because incrementation is such a frequent operation, most programming languages, including C#, have a special operator for it. So, as you can see, each and every one of them increments the value of the variable by 1. The difference between these two forms of incrementing operators is that the last one will always increment by 1. So this plus plus always by 1. This other one increments by whatever value we are giving into it. So for instance, we could say something like variable plus equal 5, and it would increment by 5. Not only there are two operators for incrementation, but there are also two forms for them, prefix and postfix incrementation. Take a look at this. So, in both cases we start at 1, but then when we use the postfix version, the program used the value of the variable to output it on the screen, and only after that it incremented it, while in the version of the prefix, it first incremented it, and then it used that incremented value to output it with console write line on the screen. So there is a difference between them. If we have incrementation, of course, there is also decrementation, which is minus minus or minus equals. And there are also two forms for it, prefix and postfix decrementation. And in fact, we have divide equals, multiply equals, power equals, and others, but those are rarely used. That's about it about the basics of operators. There are a few others more specialized, but as a beginner, don't stress about it. We'll learn them when we encounter them. But until then, if this video helped you, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tech frame.